Hello everyone, welcome to the new session of Breathing and Exchange of Gases NCERT exercise. So today we are going to solve the questions from the NCERT exercise of the chapter Breathing and Exchange of Gases. So let us start the session, and here comes the first question. Define vital capacity and what is its significance, right? So we have to tell about the vital capacity. So here comes the solution of it. Vital capacity is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled after the maximum inspiration. Okay. So when you do the maximum inspiration, means when you take up the air from the outer environment, okay, and that is the forceful, that is the maximum inspiration, right? And after that, the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled, okay, and whatever the air that you exhaled out, that will be the maximum volume of air. So it is about 3.5 to 4.5 liter in the human body. Okay, so this is a estimate of how much the maximum volume of air that is exhaled out after the maximum inspiration. So it is around 3.5 to 4.5 liters in the human body, and it promotes the act of supplying fresh air and getting rid of foul air, thereby increasing the gases exchange between the tissue and the environment. Okay, so it is actually promoting the act of supplying fresh air. When you take a lot of breathe in, okay, forceful, then you are getting a lot of fresh air, okay, and getting rid of foul air. At the same time, when you exhale out a maximum amount of, okay, the foul air, so thereby increasing the gaseous exchange between the tissue and the environment. So this is the way of increasing, okay, the gaseous exchange between the tissue and the environment. And this vital capacity is around 3.5 to 4.5 liter in the human body. And this is the significance. What is the significance? What is the use of this vital capacity? Right? So this is increasing the gaseous exchange. When you do the forceful inspiration and expiration, then you are increasing the gaseous exchange between the tissue and the environment. So this is the significance of this type of gaseous exchange, right? Okay, moving to our next question. State the volume of air remaining in the lungs after a normal breathing. Right? So you have to tell about the state of volume of air that remains in the lungs. When you expire out, then also a small amount of air is left inside the lungs in a normal breathing process. So what is the volume of that? Okay, the volume of air remaining in the lungs after a normal expiration is known as functional residual capacity. Okay, this is called as functional residual capacity, FRC. Okay, and it includes expiratory reserve volume and the residual volume, right? So when you a small amount of air that remain in the lungs after the normal expiration, okay, that is known as functional residual capacity, right? And this functional residual capacity is include the expiratory reserve volume as well as residual volume. Okay, so expiratory reserve volume, ERV, is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled after the normal expiration. When we do the normal expiration, normal inspiration and expiration, right? So ERV is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled out, that you give out, okay, and that is after the normal expiration, and it is about 1000 ml to 1500 ml. So it is an estimate of this expiratory reserve volume. Okay, expiratory reserve volume is around 1000 ml to 1500 ml, right? And residual volume, what is the residual volume? Is the volume of air remaining in the lungs after the maximum expiration. When we do the maximum amount of expiration, then also some volume of air get remain in the lungs. And sorry, and that is called as residual volume. That is called as residual volume. And what is the volume of it? That is 1100 ml to 1500 ml. Same. The expiratory reserve volume and reserve volume is the volume is same, 1000 ml to 1500 ml. So functional residual capacity, what will be the functional residual capacity, is equal to ERV plus RV. Okay, so that will be 1500 ml plus 1500 ml. So that will be total around 3000 ml. And functional residual capacity of the human lung is about 2500 to 3000 ml. Okay, so this is the functional residual capacity. Moving to our next question. Diffusion of gases occur in the alveolar region. Okay, so there is an alveolar region only and not in the other parts of the respiratory system. Why? So where does the diffusion of gases take place inside the lungs? The diffusion of gases takes place inside the alveolar region. You know alveolar region, that is a balloon-like structure, right? And this alveolar region, you can say that it is a unit of the lungs where the gases exchange takes place, right? So diffusion of gases occur in the alveolar region only and not in the other parts of the respiratory system. Why? You have to tell why. At this region only the exchange of gases takes place. So here comes the answer. Each alveolus is made up of highly permeable and thin layers of squamous epithelium cells. Okay, so alveolus is made up of highly permeable and thin layer of squamous epithelium. If you see the cells of alveoli, then they are having the squamous epithelium cells. Okay, and oxygen rich air enters the body through the nose and reaches to the alveoli. Okay, so oxygen rich air, the air which is having a lot of oxygen, that get enter inside the body through the nose and reaches to the alveoli, and it reaches to the alveoli region. The deoxygenated carbon dioxide rich blood from the body is brought to the heart by the veins. Okay, deoxygenated blood, the blood that is having the carbon dioxide rich. Okay, so that is deoxygenated blood, and that is get collected from the body and it is brought to the heart, and heart pump it to the lungs via veins. The heart pump it to the lungs for the oxygenation. So from the heart region the blood moves to the lungs region to get oxygenation, right? The exchange of O2 and CO2 takes place between the blood capillaries surrounding the alveoli and the gases present in the alveoli. So the gases exchange at this particular site, the gases exchange takes place. The exchange of O2 and CO2 take place between the blood capillaries and surrounding the alveoli. So alveoli is a balloon-like structure, and at the outer surface of it there is running blood capillaries. So the blood capillaries is having the deoxygenated blood, that is the carbon dioxide rich blood, whereas the alveoli region is having the oxygen, full of oxygen there, right? So what happened, according to the concentration gradient, the exchange of gases takes place. The oxygen moves to the blood that is present in the capillaries, and carbon dioxide moves towards the alveoli, right? So the exchange of O2 and CO2 takes place between the blood capillaries surrounding the alveoli and the gases present in the alveoli. So thus alveoli are the site of gaseous exchange. So we can say that this alveoli are the site for the gaseous exchange, and the exchange of gases takes place by the simple diffusion, right? Here the gaseous exchange is occurring because of the simple diffusion process and because of pressure or the concentration differences. So here the concentration differences are there, right? Okay, the concentration differences, it means that in the blood, the the blood that has been came from the heart to the lungs, right? So here what happened, the blood is having lot of carbon dioxide, whereas the alveoli sac is having lot of oxygen. So these two gases move according to the concentration gradient, but and the gases exchange takes place by the process of simple diffusion. So the barrier between the alveoli and the capillaries are so thin that diffusion can take place. So oxygen will move from alveoli to the blood capillaries, and carbon dioxide will move from blood capillaries to the alveoli region, right? The exchange of gases takes place by the simple diffusion because of the pressure or the concentration differences. So that is why we can see here there is a concentration differences. The barrier between the alveoli and the capillaries is thin, and the diffusion of gases take place from the higher partial pressure to the lower partial pressure, right? So the barrier, this is the barrier. The squamous epithelial layer of the alveoli region, the endothelium cells of the blood capillaries, right? These are the barrier. So these gases are crossing through this barrier. Okay, the venous blood that reaches to the alveoli has a lower partial pressure of O2 and higher partial pressure of CO2 as compared to the alveolar air. So this is, they are talking about the blood capillaries, right? So in the venous blood that reaches to the alveoli has lower partial pressure of O2 and higher partial pressure of CO2 as compared to the alveolar air. Hence the oxygen diffuses into the blood. Okay, there is a concentration gradient difference, so the oxygen diffuses into the blood, and simultaneously the carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood and moves to the alveoli region. So in this way the exchange of gases takes place, right? So the diffusion here, what is the mechanism by which process the gases exchange is taking place, right? So that is the diffusion of gases that is occurring at the alveolar region, right? Okay, moving to our next question. What are the major transport mechanism for CO2? Explain. Major transport mechanism. So let us see here. And this is asking about the CO2, how the carbon dioxide are transported. So carbon dioxide are transported via three different means. Okay, so let us see what are those. Plasma and red blood cells transport carbon dioxide. So the liquid part of the blood, that is the plasma, and there are certain corpuscles, okay, blood corpuscles. So red blood cells transport carbon dioxide. Plasma and red blood cells transport the carbon dioxide, and this is because they are readily soluble in water. Because they are readily soluble in water. So this carbon dioxide is get dissolved in the plasma. So through plasma, the number one, by the plasma, about 7% of CO2 is carried in a dissolved state through the plasma. So 7% of carbon dioxide get dissolved in the plasma, right? And carbon dioxide is transported via plasma also. Okay, so carbon dioxide combined with water and forms the carbonic acid. So here what happened, CO2, because the water is present in the plasma region, so it combined with water, CO2 plus H2O, it gives H2CO3. So this is the carbonic acid, right? So since the process of forming carbonic acid is slow, only a small amount of carbon dioxide is carried this way. Okay, not all, only 7% of the carbon dioxide is transported via carbonic acid, because this carbon dioxide get dissolved in the water that is present in the plasma region, right? In this way the carbon dioxide is transported. Second way, through RBC. Through RBC. So about 25% of CO2 is transported by the red blood cells as a carbaminohemoglobin. Okay, so carbaminohemoglobin, it means that the carbon dioxide combined with hemoglobin, and this carbon dioxide binds to the amino group of the polypeptide chain of the hemoglobin and forms a compound known as carbaminohemoglobin. And it is known as a carbaminohemoglobin. So this is very, very important. And you can see here only 25% of CO2 is transported by the red blood cells as a carbaminohemoglobin. Only 25%. Okay. Now, through sodium bicarbonate, this is very, very important, through sodium bicarbonate, about 70% of the carbon dioxide is transported as sodium bicarbonate, right? So sodium bicarbonate is you can say a type of salt that is formed by this carbon dioxide getting dissolved, okay, in the this form of sodium bicarbonate, 70%, right? And as CO2 diffuses, into the blood plasma, a large part of it combined with water to form the carbonic acid. So first of all, what happened? Carbon dioxide combined with water to form the carbonic acid. And for this, there is a requirement of enzyme that is called as carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase, right? So as CO2 diffuses into the blood plasma, a large part of it combines with water to form the carbonic acid in the presence of enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase is a zinc enzyme. Zinc enzyme means for its activity they require zinc element, and that speed up the formation of carbonic acid. So when the zinc is not present, this reaction is still going on, but it is a very slow pace. Okay, very slow pace. But as it is having a zinc, as it gets the zinc, the reaction speed, the rate of speed of reaction increases. The carbonic acid dissociate into the bicarbonate and hydrogen ion. And later on, what happens? This H2CO3, in the presence of anhydrase, carbonic anhydrase, it is broken down to HCO3 ion and hydrogen ion. Okay, so this is the three way in which the carbon dioxide is transported. 7% by the dissolved in the water, and that is present in the plasma part, and 25% is transported by carbaminohemoglobin, and third, that is the sodium bicarbonate form. So sodium bicarbonate form, and it is transported by via this as a sodium bicarbonate, and it is transportation. It's such type of transportation is around 70%. That is the major part. Moving to our next question. What will be the partial pressure of O2 and partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the atmospheric air compared to those in the alveolar air? First, partial pressure of O2 lesser and partial pressure of CO2 is higher. Second, partial pressure of O2 higher and partial pressure of CO2 lesser. Third, partial pressure of O2 is higher and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is also higher. And fourth, partial pressure of O2 is lesser and partial pressure of CO2 is also lesser. Okay, so what will be the partial pressure of O2 and PCO2 and a partial pressure of PCO2 in the atmospheric air as compared to the alveolar? So here you can see the answer. The partial pressure of oxygen is higher and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is lesser. So the partial pressure of oxygen in atmosphere is higher than that of the oxygen in the alveolar region. Okay, the pressure of this oxygen in the atmosphere, okay, it is having greater pressure. In atmospheric air, partial pressure of O2 is around 159 mmHg, and the alveolar it is around 104 mmHg. So here you can see what is the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere. It is around 160 mmHg, and in the alveolar it is around 104 mmHg, right? So the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is lesser than that of the carbon dioxide in the alveolar air. In atmosphere it is around 0.3 mmHg, whereas in the alveolar it is about 40 mmHg. So now you can compare with the atmosphere and the alveolar region, right? So you can compare the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere and in the alveolar region, partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and the alveolar region, right? Explain the process of inspiration under the normal condition. Okay, so what will be the process of inspiration under the normal condition? So let us see that. So here comes inspiration. The chest cavity expands. Chest cavity bent outward and upward, right? So ribs is moving upward. Sternum is also moving upward, and diaphragm is moving downward. So it increases the ultimate volume of the chest cavity. Okay, volume of the chest cavity. So first of all, the diaphragm contracts. The first thing happens that diaphragm contracts. Inspiration or inhalation is the process of bringing air from outside the body into the lungs. Okay, so this is the main thing that is occurring here, that air is moving from outside to inside, outside from the atmosphere to inside into the lungs, and it is carried out by creating a pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. Why the air will move inside? Okay, so there must be some pressure gradient. So when air enters the lungs, the diaphragm contracts toward the abdominal cavity. So there in the during the inhalation, what happened at that particular time, the diaphragm stretches downward. Okay, it is moving downward. Diaphragm contracts towards the abdominal cavity, thereby increasing the space in the thoracic cavity and accommodating the inhaled air. So what happened? The diaphragm stretches downward, okay, and it increases the space in the thoracic cavity for accumulating the inhaled air. The volume of the thoracic chamber in the anterior-posterior axis increases with the simultaneous contraction of the external intercostal muscles. So there are external intercostal muscles in the case of ribs. So this causes the ribs and the sternum to move out, thereby increasing the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis. So there is a ventricle axis, okay, backside, and in the front side you see there is the rib cage and the sternum bone is there. Okay, so what happened? This sternum rises upward, ribs rises upward and outward, and this causes the ribs and the sternum to move out, thereby increasing. So the external intercostal muscles are there to contract and pushes outward the sternum and the ribs, and thereby increasing the volume of the thoracic cavity. So the two things that is occurring here: first, the diaphragm is moving out, okay, and the contraction of the external intercostal muscle that brings the ribs and the sternum towards the outside, and this increases the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsiventral axis. It increases the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsiventral axis. Now, the overall increase in the thoracic volume leads to a similar increase in the pulmonary volume. Okay, so as it increases, the thoracic volume leads to the similar increase in the thoracic pulmonary volume. Now, As a result of this increase, the intrapulmonary pressure becomes lesser than the atmospheric pressure. Okay, so intrapulmonary pressure goes down as compared to the atmospheric pressure, and this causes the air from the outside the body to move into the lungs. So in this way, the air moves into the lungs region. Okay, moving to our next question then. How is respiration regulated? So this is a very important question, the regulation of the respiration. Okay, so the respiratory rhythm center present in the medullary region and the brain is primarily responsible for the regulation of respiration. So we all know that the medulla oblongata, the medullary region, right? So it is the present in the hindbrain. Okay, forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. So this is a part of the hindbrain. So the respiratory rhythm center present in the medulla region of the brain. Okay, and it is primarily responsible for the regulation of respiration. The pneumotaxic center can alter the function performed by the respiratory rhythm center by signaling to reduce the inspiration rate. So there is a pneumotaxic center. It can sense the the sensory that is related to the respiratory rhythm. So the pneumotaxic center can alter the function performed by the respiratory rhythm. Okay, the respiratory rhythm center which is present in the medulla. So there is another center that is called as pneumotaxic center which can alter, which can change the function that is performed by the respiratory rhythm center, and this is done by the signaling to reduce the inspiration rate. So it can alter the rate of inspiration. Now the chemosensitive region present near the respiratory center, there is a chemosensitive region that is present near the respiratory center, is sensitive to the carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion. So these 2 points are very, very important. The chemosensitive region present near the respiratory center, and it is very sensitive to the amount of carbon dioxide and also the hydrogen ion. So this region then signals to change the rate of expiration for eliminating the compounds. Right, so this region is very important and it can signal to change the rate of expiration. So it can alter the rate of expiration as well. The receptor present in the carotid artery and aorta detect the level of carbon dioxide and hydrogen in the blood. So the aorta, that is the one of the thickest artery. Okay, so this can sense the carotid artery and aorta. It can sense the level of carbon dioxide and the hydrogen ion that are present in the blood. And as the level of carbon dioxide increases, what happened? The carbon dioxide level increases, the respiratory center sends nerve impulse for the necessary changes. So the respiratory center here send nerve impulses for the necessary changes. So this is very, very important. Okay, so next, here comes the next question. What is the effect of partial pressure of carbon dioxide on oxygen transport? What is the role of this partial pressure of carbon dioxide on the oxygen transport? So let us see the answer. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide plays an important role in the transportation of oxygen. How? At the alveolus, the low partial pressure of carbon dioxide and high pressure of oxygen favors the formation of hemoglobin. Okay. So at the alveolus region, we see that if there is a low partial pressure of carbon dioxide and high partial pressure of oxygen, that favors the formation of hemoglobin. At the tissues, the high PCO2 and low PO2 favors the dissociation of oxygen from the oxyhemoglobin. So oxygen, which is combined with the hemoglobin, it gets detached over there. When there is a high pressure of carbon dioxide. So at the tissue level, more and more carbon dioxide is produced. by the process of cellular respiration, right? So at this tissue, high partial pressure of carbon dioxide and low partial pressure of oxygen favors the dissociation of oxygen from the this oxyhemoglobin. Hence, the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen is enhanced by the decrease of partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the blood, right? So therefore, oxygen is transported in blood as a oxyhemoglobin, and oxygen dissociate at the tissue. So at the tissue level, it get dissociated, whereas at the alveolar region, this oxyhemoglobin is formed. Okay. Now comes the what happens to the respiratory process in a man going up a hill. So when you are going to the hill region, what happens to the respiratory process? It get changes, right? So let us see how it happens. As the altitude increases, when you go to the higher altitude, the oxygen level in the atmosphere decreases. Okay, the air get reduced. So obviously the oxygen is a part of the air. So oxygen level in the atmosphere get decreases. Therefore, as a man goes uphill, he get less oxygen with each breath. So when you breathe, you get less oxygen because the less oxygen is present in the atmosphere. This causes the amount of oxygen in the blood to decline. Okay, and as a result, what will happen? The amount of oxygen in the blood goes down. The respiratory rate increases in response to the decrease in the oxygen content of the blood, right? So the respiratory rate increases because your demand for the oxygen is same. That cannot be, okay, that cannot be minimized. You require that much amount of oxygen. So what will happen? The respiratory rate increases in response to decrease in the oxygen content of the blood. You respire more, and simultaneously the rate of heartbeat increases because more oxygen you required, right? So the heartbeat also increases to increase the supply of oxygen to the blood, right? So this is one of the very important practical question. Okay, moving to our next question. What is the site of gaseous exchange in an insect? So this is talking about, in case of insect, how the gaseous exchange takes place. So in insects, gaseous exchange occur through the network of tubes collectively known as the tracheal system. So this is a very unique type of tracheal system we see in the case of insects. If you see the inside body of the insect, we can see that they are having a tube-like structure which is running horizontally as well as vertically, right? So that is called as the tracheal system. Okay, that is known as the tracheal system. So trachea are the hollow tubes that is running all over its body. The small opening on the side of an insect body are known as spiracles. Okay, so if you see the insects out at the sideways, you can see small holes are present. Okay, these small holes are the small opening, okay, on the sides of the insect body, and those are known as spiracles. Oxygen rich air enter through these spiracles. Okay, oxygen rich air enters, okay, through these spiracles and get to the tracheal tube. The spiracles are connected to the network of the tube that is called as tracheal tube. Okay, a trachea-like structures. Now, from the spiracles, oxygen enter the trachea. Okay, when the spiracles are open, the air get enter inside this spiracles to the trachea, and here oxygen diffuses into the cells of the body. So the trachea wall layer is very thin, and exchange of gases can takes place. From here, oxygen diffuses into the cells of the body. So the movement of carbon dioxide follow the reverse path. As you take away the oxygen that is present in the tracheal tube, you respire at the cellular region, right? There is a cellular respiration and there is a production of carbon dioxide. So the movement of carbon dioxide follows the reverse path. Okay, the carbon dioxide comes towards the tracheal tube, okay, and oxygen goes from the tracheal tube to the body cells. The CO2 from the cells of the body first enters the trachea. Okay, it first enters the trachea and then leaves the body through the spiracles. It first get enter the trachea and leave out the body through the spiracles region. Okay. Okay, so moving to our next question. Define oxygen dissociation curve. Can you suggest any reason for the sigmoidal pattern? So this is also one of the very important questions from this chapter. The oxygen dissociation curve is a graph showing the percentage saturation of oxyhemoglobin at the various partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, so there is a oxygen dissociation curve. So that graph explain how the oxygen get combined with the hemoglobin and how at what happens then there is a separation of the oxygen at the and hemoglobin. So oxygen dissociation curve is a graph showing the percentage of saturation of oxyhemoglobin, how much hemoglobin that got concentrated by attaching with the oxygen, okay, at the various partial pressure of oxygen. So the curve shows the equilibrium of the oxyhemoglobin and hemoglobin at various partial pressure. In the lungs, the partial pressure of oxygen is high. PO2 is quite high. PO2 is quite high, okay, in the lungs region. Okay, it is occurring in the lungs region. Hence, hemoglobin binds to oxygen and forms the oxyhemoglobin. So what happens here? Hemoglobin binds with the oxygen and it forms the oxyhemoglobin. And this happens at the lungs. Okay. Now the tissue have a low oxygen concentration. Now coming up to the tissue level. So there the oxygen concentration is less and therefore at the tissue oxyhemoglobin releases oxygen to form the hemoglobin. Okay, oxyhemoglobin that releases the oxygen to form the hemoglobin. The sigmoid shape of the dissociation curve is because of the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. At the same time, what you see here, the sigmoid shape of the dissociation curve is because of the binding of oxygen to the hemoglobin. As the first oxygen molecule binds to the hemoglobin, it increases the affinity of the second molecule of oxygen to bind with the hemoglobin. So subsequently, hemoglobin attaches more and more hemoglobin. Okay. Okay. So next question here. Have you heard about hypoxia? Try to gather information about it and discuss with your friends. So the answer of this question, hypoxia. What do you understand by the hypoxia? Hypoxia is a condition characterized by an inadequate or decreased supply of oxygen to the lungs. When there is a less supply of oxygen to the lungs. Okay, so that is called as hypoxia. And it is caused by the several extrinsic factors such as reduction in the PO2, inadequate oxygen, etc. So there are so many extrinsic factors like reduction in the partial pressure of oxygen or inadequate oxygen supply. So when there is a less amount of oxygen present in the atmosphere, that also causes the one of the factor that it forms the inadequate or decreased supply of oxygen to the lungs. So the different types of hypoxia are discussed below. Hypoxemic hypoxia. In this condition, there is a reduction in the oxygen content of the blood. As a result, low partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood. So here what happened? You see there is a reduction in the oxygen content of the blood. Okay, less amount of oxygen is present in the blood, and as a result, low partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood. Anemic hypoxia. So in this condition, there is a reduction in the concentration of hemoglobin. So less hemoglobin, so less number of oxygen that can be carried. So that is called as anemic hypoxia. Stagnant or ischemic hypoxia. In this condition, there is a deficiency of oxygen content of the blood because of the poor blood circulation. When there is a circulation of the blood is affected, so there you see the ischemic hypoxia. It occurs when a person is exposed to the cold temperature for a prolonged period of time. Right? Histotoxic hypoxia. In this condition, the tissue are unable to use oxygen. The tissues are not able to take the oxygen, and this occur during the carbon monoxide or cyanamide poisoning. Okay, cyanamide poisoning or the carbon dioxide monoxide. Okay, so that is the histotoxic hypoxia. Next question is distinguish between first IRV and ERV. So let us see the three differences. The IRV, inspiratory reserve volume, and expiratory reserve volume. What is the difference between these two? Okay, so it is a maximum volume of air that can be inhaled after a normal inspiration. When you respire normally, okay, and then what happened? The maximum of air that can be inhaled after normal inspiration. So after the normal inspiration, how much more amount of air that is inhaled? That is the inspiratory reserve volume. Okay, now it is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled after the normal expiration. So there is a normal expiration, we expire, okay, we give out the carbon dioxide laden air. So that is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled out, right? So if we talk about the volume of IRV, inspiratory reserve volume, then it is around 2500 ml to 3500 ml in the human lungs. Okay, now expiratory reserve volume, it is about 1000 to 1100 ml in the human lungs. So this is the different volume of IRV and ERV. Moving to the next question, inspiratory capacity and expiratory capacity. So it is a volume of air that can be inhaled after a normal expiration. So there is a normal expiration. After that, the amount of air that can be inhaled. And here, expiratory capacity, it is the volume of air that can be exhaled after normal inspiration. Here it is inhaled and here it is exhaled. It is included the tidal volume and inspiratory reserve volume. So this is the capacity. Inspiratory capacity is the TV plus IRV, and its expiratory capacity, that is the TV plus ERV. Expiratory reserve volume and inspiratory reserve volume. Right? Okay, moving to our next question of this part only, vital capacity and the total lung capacity. What do you understand by the vital capacity and the total lung capacity? So the vital capacity, it is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled after the maximum inspiration. And it include inspiratory capacity and ERV, inspiratory reserve volume. And it is around 400 ml in the human lungs. Okay, this is the vital capacity. And if you talk about the total lung capacity, then it is the volume of air in the lungs after maximum inspiration. When there is a maximum inspiration, then it includes inspiratory capacity, inspiratory reserve volume, and residual volume. Unite all together and you get this a total lung capacity, right? It is about 5000 to 6000 ml in the human lungs. Okay, moving to our last question of this chapter. What is tidal volume? What do you understand by the tidal volume? Find out the tidal volume approximate value for a healthy human in an hour. So the tidal volume is the volume of air inspired or expired during the normal respiration. When you do the normal respiration, so some amount of air you inspired and expired during the normal respiration. So it is about 6,000 to 8,000 ml of air per minute. And the hourly tidal volume for a healthy human can be calculated as 6,000 to 8,000 ml per minute, right? And the total volume in an hour, then you can multiply it with the 60 minutes. So 6,000 to 800 ml into 60 minutes. So that will be 3.6 into 10 to the power 5 ml to 4.8 into 10 to the power 5 ml. Therefore, the human tidal volume of the healthy human is approximately 3.6 into 10 to the power 8 ml, 3.6 into 10 to the power 5 ml to 4.8 into 10 to the power 5 ml. Okay, so this is the tidal volume of a healthy human. So with this, we have completed this chapter. Thank you very much for attending today's session. We will meet with another session. Till then, take care.